Thank you for joining me today, Fiona.
You're
And
quite welcome.
yeah, so let's do something here. He Said, She Said is a very, very simple show. It's a show about conversations and relationship issues between men and women. It could be between men and women too, but basically it's a relationship show. So let's talk about, first off, some of your experiences with relationships so we can let the audience know, where you come from or what your
Right.
experiences are. So go for it.
Well, my relationships are pretty complex because I've had so many of them. Not only have I had many, I've had, well, I'll just give you a number.
Okay, throw a
I've
number
had
at
at
me.
least 1,000.
A
In a
thousand?
lot of different kinds of situations.
So about 1,000 different physical relationships
Absolutely.
with men,
Intercourse.
or with men and women.
I've also been with women, yes.
Okay. Okay. Well, that clears a few things up. So we consider you somewhat of an expert on physical relationships with, at least with men. We're talking about mostly with men.
Right. It's
All right.
been mostly with men.
So what have you discovered in your relationships with men? Is there something common that you've discovered, or is there so much variety that there's just so much to talk about with the differences and the similarities between relationships with men and women, or at least as far as you're concerned?
Well, okay, that's a very deep question.
It is a deep question.
For a girl like me, it's like all this stuff is flashing through my head.
You want me to just narrow it down to just one quick thing, one quick question?
Maybe so.
Okay, so you're from the South, and so most Southern belles, excuse
Yes.
my challenging attempt at sounding Southern, but most Southern belles are considered pretty prim and proper.
Yes.
Yeah, wouldn't you think? That's just
Or they're trashy and whorish.
oh, they're trashy and horse.
Or they're secretly behind whoever they're with. Trashy and whorish and,
Okay.
and a slut.
So how did you, as a Southern gal, not necessarily a Southern belle, but as a Southern gal, how did you get into an environment or situation where you have been with at least, let's say, 1,000 partners?
Well, because I was raised in such ignorance, and my father was such a dominant kind of dictator type. He was also very protective, overly protective, very religious. I had to find out what the world was really all about.
What you were missing.
And I also wanted to get control over men like my father had over my mother and all of us. And I just couldn't stand it, because I'm just too strong. So I had to figure out, how can I build that strength more, and how can I, get power over men versus them having power over me.
Right, I get it.
And I also wanted to know what they knew, what makes them happy, and I wanted to be great in my relationship when I did find the one.
So did you basically say you started out to try to learn?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It was like going to school. At first, it was like being in a lab, but at first it was just being naive and bumping in the dark.
And that's kind of fun too.
Letting men kind of like, talk me into things and be a very, they just weren't very, there was no real method. It wasn't like they were in love with me or anything like that. So I just kind of ad-libbed sex
Yeah.
for quite some time.
And there are a couple of distinct advantages and disadvantages of relationships. One of them is it's kind of fun. So that's a great advantage.
It does have
feel
a
good,
funness
it's fun.
to it because you're laughing together, you're trying things out, you are touching, you're giving love no matter what, unless you're in a terrible situation, which I've been in those as well, where you just don't want to be where you're at, but you have to be there. For different reasons. I was raised in deep poverty, so some of my sexual relationships have definitely been financial.
Yes, I get that.
Survival and so forth, and trying to just get to the next level of oneself. Anyway, men were very adventurous, and I wanted to be like a man too, a part of me.
On the one hand, sex is power, and you recognize that power, you wanted some of that power. But on the other hand, in order to have that kind of power, you would have to be able to be good at it to be able to control the situation, because if you're not very good at it, it's not very powerful.
Right, but it wasn't really sex.
Really?
Sex was not exactly a power, because I was extremely sexy, beautiful, and every man wanted to fuck me, you know. I had the looks and I had the body, so I could use that. But really what I was really trying to do was to understand men, understand what they were, where they were coming from, and what made them tick, what their buttons were. And that was not just sexually. So I wasn't really just wanting to get power over them, and that didn't feel always power over them sexually either. It did not always give me power. Matter of fact, there was a lot of humiliation that also went on, you know, because men were not always my friend. They were not always, you know, really wanting to be buddy sexual, you know, benefits on both sides.
Sexually compatible, pleasing each other. That was
right,
really
right. Making love. Matter of fact, I didn't learn how to make love until I was like 32. Okay, before that, it was just athletic sex. That was all very confusing, because really I learned how to make love by simply not having sex, just kissing, touching for 3 weeks. There was no intercourse, nothing, because I had developed a situation in my body, and the doctor said, do not have sex for a while.
That's an interesting, maybe an aside. We had talked in different podcasts, we had talked about the difference between intimacy and love and romance and things like that, and that a lot of times intimacy may not include sex at all. It is just the caressing and the talking to each other.
Well, woman needs to be, one thing that men don't understand about women is that women need to be completely relaxed. They don't come with a hard-on. Men do.
Yes, they do.
Okay, so they're pretty much instantly alive sexually. Whereas a woman, she needs to have time to build. You know, it's like an ocean wave. You know, the wave has got to come into the shore, and you've got to make that happen. Either she can do it somewhat herself, but it's really works better if she does it with a partner, a mate, because that intimacy just makes sex unbelievable.
Yes.
More than just being alone, masturbating. And masturbating in front of another person is also more exciting than doing it alone. But of course, if you've really started in your life as, you know, just, you know, masturbating, I did not. I had sex with a sibling, a sister, starting at a very early age, because I watched the animals on the farm, and I said, oh, let me try that. And I was best friends, and so we went from there, you see.
You experimented.
Yes, but I didn't have my first man until I was 18. So it's very complex. What works for you?
Exactly.
Versus some girls start with intercourse in the anal. I did not start that way. So, and I've experimented with that as well.
There are some things that people engage in sexually, that they engage in, that are relatively what they call they're just not intercourse. There's oral sex, there's manipulation, there's touching, there's groping, there's first, second, third base, that kind of thing.
Right.
So, and that's, on the one hand, that's important in terms of getting to know the person and relaxing them, but it is also unfulfilling sometimes to guys, because they want to get home. They want to get all the way home.
Except for the smarter ones who've had good instruction.
Right.
And that's what men need. They need to have good instruction.
Okay, so let's do this then. Just as an example of something, a good thing for he said, she said, would be for us to learn some things in our conversations with people, so we educate each other. So if we accept the premise that, having been with at least 1,000 lovers, what did you learn from that, and what do you think you may have taught from that?
What I learned is that men are obsessed with their penises.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
It is more important than probably anything else on the planet. Their prestige sometimes can be, you know, their reputations. That's where you hit them the most. Penises, reputation, money. And I found that men can be very cold if the penis is their ultimate goal. And until they really, a woman makes them respect them by not giving them what they want at first, that is one of the secrets. Because men just can't respect a woman who does it too quickly, too easily. And a woman's got to demand that respect.
I want to go
So
back.
it's kind of like men are boys until a woman says, I won't allow you to be a boy.
Right.
You've got to grow up, be a man, respect me, do the right thing,
Sure.
or just leave, get away from me.
Sure.
You know.
Well, I want to mention something. I want to go back to the men are focused on their penises, and that's a common thing that we've discussed
Yes.
with some of the women.
You
Sometimes
can
don't-
manipulate a man through his penis,
Right.
definitely.
Literally and figuratively.
Right.
But
Whereas a woman, it's more emotional, mental. And if a man knows how to tease a woman's pussy with his mind, verbally talk to her, I don't mean just nasty talk like it is with men, but really knows how to talk to her. And usually it has to be a man who has high intellect. Those are
Or
the sexiest
well-trained.
men to me. Well, not just well trained, but the man has the ability to think outside the box, to see women past his penis, to see that individual, to kind of connect with them on an individual basis, who they really are, where they came from, where they're going, versus just in the moment. You know.
Well, I'd like to talk about one subject, and maybe if we can talk again either in the next podcast or sometime down the road. I want to talk about one of the concepts that you had mentioned about women jumping to it and giving up their jewels, giving it up early on, and that men don't respect women if they do. Oftentimes, if they give it up early on. We talked about friends with benefits relationships, and we have talked about it several times with several different women. And most of the things that we come up with at the end is we really believe that men and women should become friends first and then go after the benefits rather than reverse order. Go for the benefits and then try to become friends.
Well, I have a drastic understanding of all of that, which is that women should not have sex with men at all until they know he is the one. I don't believe in sex with benefit. I don't believe in sex of just having sex. I believe you only need one partner. After all I've gone through, all I've seen, I'm still not ready for sex.
Okay, but wouldn't you have missed out on all of the training?
Yes, but
all
you
the
see,
other
the thing about it, if you get that one person, first you must know yourself. Get your own identity. You can't understand other human beings or understand a man or another person, period, until you know yourself. So first is the identity. Then after that, you figure out what kind of man matches you, works for you. And then you wait until you meet that person. You meet him in a way where you can really get to know him. Groups, activities, not just the intimate one-on-one. That's not enough. And it takes time. And you get to know their family. You really get to know this person through and through. Everything that I've seen and gone through taught me. It's given me deep knowledge about what really is the total reality of sex. Sex is never just sex. We really need to treat each other with a lot more reverence and respect. And to accomplish that, we really only need one mate. So we should be putting our lives together, find out who we are. We must have an identity first before we ever pick a mate. And get ready for that one person. We only need one mate. With that one mate, you can learn everything together. You open up, it has to be, two people that can learn. Get on the internet, read books, discuss things together, learn. Find out how they feel about sex, what they've done with sex, what they haven't done with sex, and who they truly are, what their fantasies are, how wild or perverted or weird they may be.
Right, exactly.
Get to know what's going on, because later on you're going to be in that relationship for years, and you're going to find out later on, I really don't know who this person is. I don't know who I am, and you end up having a lot of trouble. Also, I really believe that is our greatest success for sex.
Okay, let's do this. Let's stop here and talk about the learning about each other and some of the suggestions and the pluses and minuses in another podcast. So I want to thank the listeners for joining us on He Said.
She said.
Again, this is Michael.
And this is Fiona.
Very good to talk with you. We'll talk with you again next time.